Welcome to Stress-Free Solutions with Sarah. I'm your host, Sarah Elise, a stress management and fitness coach, advocating the world to trust their gut more often. I discuss various ways to manage stress and share personal stories of guest experts who have gone through the same stressors as all of you at home. Hey there, super moms of the universe. Let's play a game called hide and seek. No, not with your kids or that mysteriously vanishing left sock. It's time to seek out you in the everyday hide and seek of life. Introducing Mastering the Soul System, a 12-week journey to reclaim your time and energy. This course is your gateway to finding balance, energy, and joy in every aspect of your bustling life. Picture this, 12 weeks where the words mom and mayhem don't always go together. Rediscover yourself with every breath in our Soulful Mind Weeks. Sing out loud in the shower or car, off-key is absolutely fine, and dance during our Soulful Body sessions, and embrace the quiet whispers of your heart in our Soulful Spirit adventures. It's about time your spirit got a front row seat, don't you think? Join us on this journey. Embrace the harmony between being a dedicated mom and your personal aspirations. Mastering the soul system, because darling, in the noise, find your silence. And maybe, just maybe, a bit of that elusive thing called me time. You deserve to thrive, not just survive. So come on, slide into our world at www.livewellenhanceyou.com/soul system. Your journey back to you starts now. Alex Sabbag is a best-selling author, speaker, two-time business owner, and entrepreneur. Her most recent venture, Soul Dive Yoga, which was founded in 2022 in Palm Desert, California. Seeking solace in the practice, she not only found healing, but also discovered a profound mission to share the transformative power of yoga with the world. Her debut memoir, Soul Dive, My Journey into the Deep, is Alex's story of resilient triumph in and outside the studio, on and off the yoga mat. Through her voice, she empowers and inspires others to embrace life's challenges, surrender to the divine redirects, and find greater peace, purpose, and presence in their own lives. Alex, I'm so grateful that we get to have this conversation today because you have such an incredible story and a pure heart. Just the brief moments I got to talk to you before we started this interview. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you. It's great to meet you. I'm doing well. Yeah. It's beautiful here in California, as I'm sure it is with you in Florida.
Yes, it's so nice. It's crazy though that we have the same connection to Chicago too. And you were there for college. I was there for college, but I definitely think your face looks familiar. I definitely think we might have had paths cross. Before we even get into your story and honestly what brought you to write the book, I wanted to talk about yoga. I always feel it's so important to take that deep breath before we even begin. Why are you so connected with yoga and that?
So, yeah, to be honest, I hated yoga. I'm 5'10" and grew up riding horses, which wasn't exactly like, flexibility or mobility focused. And once I moved to Chicago and yoga became present, I'm from Des Moines, Iowa, and yoga really wasn't a thing there at that time. I just started to dabble. And every time I was in the room, I felt like some 5'1" gymnast was telling me to move my body in a way that just wasn't physically possible for me. Over time, I would try other forms of fitness and then got really addicted to running, ran the Chicago Marathon, and shortly after broke my foot walking. So that just the level of coordination that we're working with here within my physical form. And I had been repeatedly asked by a neighbor to try this yoga studio in my neighborhood in the West Loop. And I finally gave in and went, and I hated it. I mean, typical, like, to my background, I hated it, but I kept going back. But I ultimately didn't really have a choice because given the foot and the recovering runner status, I was like, well, I need something else. And so I kind of just fell into this hot power yoga world. And if you know that at all, it becomes very cultish. And once you're in, you're in. And it's like, oh, I got to go every day. And it's like, you're just leaving like a sweaty, drowned rat. And I was totally hooked. And I did that for a few years, really just dropping into the physical part of the practice. Like all of the other philosophical or more like ethereal connectivity points of it were very lost on me. I was just like, oh my gosh, look at me. I can now touch the ground, whereas I couldn't really do that before. And I was making friends and I loved the community aspect of it. But it was over the summer during the time when my fiance was diagnosed with terminal cancer that I say yoga's higher power really struck, because the entire power of the practice was not available to me at the time. But I kept going back to the studio because I was given one really important permission slip. And this is something that has really a seed that was planted with Soul Dive Yoga, years before I even founded the business. And that was, I was given permission to show up in any way, shape, or form I was at the moment, just to simply be. And whether I laid there and flopped around, or whether I did every move or chaturanga or sobbed my eyes out, this was my home and it didn't matter. And it's like that moment was really profound for me because my house was completely hijacked by, cancer and death and like these just really dark moments. But the studio was this outlet, a place where I could go where none of that mattered and nobody knew what I was going through. It was just like, I was just another body in the sea of sweaty bodies in the studio. And I was kind of able to work some things out on my own, separate from like the reality that waited for me when I would return. So I find yoga to be still equal parts frustrating and super gratifying for all of the things that it really is. But it's this practice I keep coming back to, whether it's in power or in restore or whatever, like physical form or sitting in meditation, just to be something that allows us to arrive. And that's it. Like all we have to do is show up and we really don't have to do anything else. The rest is just extra. You just really need to get through the door. And so it's really stuck with me. And it's been a gift to be able to turn that around and offer something like that to another community with a whole different demographic of people. And who knows, sometimes we know what people are going through and sometimes we don't, but we do know that we offer them a place to be.
That's so true. The point about you just have to arrive. You just have to get your mat down and start your practice, go to the class. But it can be really hard, especially like you were just sharing. You went through a really tough time with your fiancé being diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And moving through the flow, what would come up for you during that time, during those classes?
Oh, and maybe anything and everything or nothing. I think there's a point when, I mean, I think life is a great equalizer in a lot of ways, right? So I'm really unique and special that I had this experience. Plenty of people have had a similar experience where you wake up one day and you're one way and you go to bed that same day and you're a completely different person with a different trajectory that you had in the morning. So I think when you go through a traumatic moment like that, there is a bit of shock that enters your system. And whether it's like, this can't be my reality, it's like a little sprinkle of denial, or like everything's going to be fine, like the eternal optimist, or, oh, we have a 0.01% chance of survival. Great, I got this. Like I can control all these elements and make it better. So whether I was like brainstorming whatever reality I wanted to create for myself, or simply just looking for a break, and truly just to get away. I mean, who knows the abundance of things that would go through my head. But I think the one important point to note is I'm often asked, well, how did you even get out of bed every day? And I think fight or flight is a really interesting experience. We've all had it. And quite frankly, we experience it every day. It is the adrenaline, it's the energy that gets us up and about. But there is just this driver when it hits you that nothing can stop you. And then, years later, you just sleep a lot because you're so exhausted from all of the fight or flight that's hit. I did it because I chose, and therefore I had to show up for all of these different things. And then yoga just was always something that was on the list. So I would take him to these daily radiation treatments at Northwestern, sit in the bowels of the hospital for a few hours, maybe have an appointment after, but he would be so tired when we got home. I knew that he could go to bed and sleep really soundly, where I could get away for an hour. So it was just this sort of repeatable pattern, like a lot of yoga is a repeatable pattern that we can just drop into. It becomes this like moving meditation, that it was just like completely woven into the new fabric of my existence at the time.
What made you, I don't want to say stick it out, but like, how were you able to remain strong as a caregiver while also, you know, understanding what the end result could be being terminal?
Well, I would say I wasn't. I mean, in some ways, sure, I showed up and I did. I think what anybody who, really is, in love and makes that sort of self-sacrifice for somebody else. But I think there was just a lot of like, I'm doing this because I love the person. And there was this glimmer of hope in the back of my mind that like, if anybody could get us out of it, it would be me. It's like, well, I'm capable, I'm smart, I can do it. I can find the clinical trial and whatever the laundry list of things that came down the pipelines. But that is a form of control. And being a very type A driver has perpetually pushed rocks up hills, whether it's career, personal relationships. This was no different. And in hindsight, looking back, there was zero surrender, there was zero acceptance, there was zero like, okay, I'm just going to sit in this. And that wasn't great. Like that kind of presented many, many moments that I'm not, super stoked to report or proud that I played a role in. But I lacked the ability to be in like the reality with him, and he got it. I mean, he was like, can you just accept that this is bad? I mean, I remember being asked that question. I was like, no, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Nobody's prepared for it. It was on my 33rd birthday that he was diagnosed. So that was just kind of an all around bummer. But whether it's 33, 63, or 83, you're not given this rule book that says like, okay, you're in the room when it happens and then here's what you do next.
Right.
So many different factors that come into play and different scenarios, and every day presents a new data set, whether it's a test result or an opportunity to go here, a consult there, or whatever. And it's like, you just have to kind of play the hand that you're given on a daily basis. And I will say now, moving forward in life and whatever things kind of come my way, the strategy to manage through that is very different than it was then. So unfortunately, I had to go through what I coined in the book as this like massive 2x4 moment where I was just completely smacked upside the head. And I think a lot of people go through that where it's like we're given these little taps that maybe we should be doing things a little differently in our life. And we're like, shh, get out. I don't want to listen. That's very inconvenient for me to have that right now. And then we get slapped, right? And we just kind of fall down and it's Tweety Bird and we can't really see and how we're going to like get up and proceed on. But maybe the more life we go through and the more we surrender, we can start to be a little bit more aware of the whispers that come our way, because they do come. I mean, I'm a firm believer in angel communication or,
Sure.
intuition and the voices. Like I actively hear voices and it's great. It's like, and then can you listen and apply? And I think we all have that ability and the gift to do it. It's just whether or not we want to take a beat, take the breath and pay attention.
What made you decide to write your memoir?
Well, my mom has always told me that I should write a book, like since my 20s. She's like, you should document these crazy dates you go on or like these experiences you have. She's like, I just have to bet that not everybody has like this subset of experiences that you do. And she's not wrong. But I was never really energetically pulled to do it then. It's like, could I have had the next Sex in the City blog? Maybe, but that really wasn't me. I didn't feel called to that level, that type of storytelling, I guess. And eventually over time, and I think the reason why is because there's nothing wrong with that. And there's plenty of that in the book, by the way. And it's wildly entertaining and we can all drink glasses of wine and laugh about all of the missteps and, ridiculous kind of exposés that I've had over time. But what it was lacking was this like depth, which kind of came with the caregiving, which sort of is the catalyst to the relatability that I have with like the human experience. So I don't think anybody needs to hear another like single gal in the city only. It's like, what else are you going to tell me that is maybe helpful for, how I live my life as a reader? And so I think what this did is kind of catapult me into a different level of connectivity with people, because I have lived and had quite a bit thrown at me in maybe not very many years on Earth, which just gave me this kind of combination of depth and relatability to do it. And then once I dropped in the space and it was like, okay, it just felt like the right time. And pretty much to be clear, 1 year ago, maybe I had 2 words of the book written. So everything moves. Like when you drop into that portal of like, okay, this is happening, it's going now, and it goes really fast. And I
Yeah.
have two people in this house who are listening to this who can attest to just how quickly things can manifest and change, when all is aligned and timing kind of takes off.
What most surprised you that started to come out of you when you wrote the book?
How easy it was for me to write it was a big thing. And I think, I mean, I wasn't surprised so much by the content because I'd lived it all, and I truly believe like one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a teacher is don't share unprocessed experiences. For example, if I went through a breakup yesterday, I wouldn't lead a yoga class and be like, so last night my boyfriend and I broke up and here's the lesson in that, right? Because we haven't really like fully digested what that means.
Yeah.
And so this was no different. I think I had to live it and then live through the aftermath of it and the loss because, he lived another 4.5 years after he was diagnosed. So there was still a lot of unfinished business sort of in that, like just sort of energetically speaking around that relationship. To go back to your question as far as like what really made me do it, and I say this at every single book party on the tour, hope to get it in every single interview. I wrote the book for 3 reasons. Number one, you're not alone. And what we were sharing, a little bit before we started recording, if life is one big vulnerability experiment, like somebody has to say, okay, I'll go first. And communicating my experience and my story allows other people to maybe see themselves in what I went through and know that they are not alone. I experienced a lot of isolation that I didn't have to go through, kind of during that time. So that's number one. Number two, you have to laugh. And no matter how dark and how heavy or, how miserable the experience is, there is a lot of beauty still existing, even in your own miserable world, and a lot of lightness that's around too. So there is a great deal of levity and lighthearted, kind of anecdotes in the book too. And number three is you have to keep going. I think I was faced with a choice. I could have just buried myself in my sorrows and the victim mentality and just chosen to like completely retreat, or I could get up and keep moving. And I had a really pivotal experience probably 6 weeks after he was diagnosed. We're like in the throes of the new routine and whatever new normal was. I had my dog outside of my apartment building, who was also on bed rest, by the way. So I had fiancé with the whole neuro-oncology team. I had a dog with a neurologist getting all kinds of neck x-rays. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So I grabbed the dog, go to the neighbor's house, make myself a margarita, and I'm standing, because none of the alcohol was in my house anymore. And so I'm standing in this little patch of grass, watching Alfie like hobble around, trying to go to the bathroom. And I was like, well, this is the bottom. Like there is no way my life is ever going to look or feel as dark as it is right here, right now in this moment when like the things I love the most in the world are like fighting for their lives. And by the way, the biggest life that was getting blown up in smoke was my own. And so that awareness piece came a little bit later, but the ability to get up and keep going, of which yoga played such a large role in that, was really what was a big learning for me. So those are the 3 reasons that I think anybody and everybody should pick up this book and read it.
You definitely got someone that's going to pick up and read the book. They're chatting with you. I'm so glad that we've connected. And I love this. Like, I want to get a little bit deeper into why that title, why Soul Dives?
Yeah. So once my caregiving period wrapped up, he went back to live with his family and I was alone again, like in my own house, and my kind of like, it was just a really bizarre place where like the relationship is over, but it's sort of like a death, but he didn't die yet. And like, that was a really messy kind of months of an experience. And it was this sort of in between time of him leaving and before I started my yoga teacher training, where I just like my train wreck of falling apart just got put on like high speed tracks. And I couldn't wait for this teacher training to start fast enough because it was like, I needed structure. I needed something else to pour myself into. I needed to figure out what I was doing on earth and like all of the things. And once that moment hit and I like dropped into that space, even a little bit before the formal training started, I just went all in. I was reading everything. I was practicing tons of yoga. I was exploring meditation. I was going to church more regularly than I ever had. And like, it was just this whole culmination of taking myself a bit out of normal life and dropping into this, like, how do I put the pieces back together, space. And for me, this whole period lasted a really long time. I mean, it was like 4 to 5 years where I think like slowly, 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 my whole life was like burning to the ground in order for it to rebuild and come back up. I think the good news, and in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go through all this and I'm going to emerge this like perfect person with a big pink bow on my head. And then maybe somebody will love me and I'll finally get married. I mean, that really like crossed my mind. But in reality, like that's not how it goes. And we know that now. And so I can sort of teach back this whole thing where like you can totally take yourself out of the ring of life. In fact, you should, but you don't need to be benched for 5 years. You don't need to be benched for a year. Like you can continue to live this imperfect existence, and know that nothing's wrong with you, but everybody needs to heal sort of at the same time. And the word soul dive means is like that moment or those moments when you do pull yourself out to drop in. The name of my yoga studio in Palm Desert is Soul Dive Yoga. And yoga is a great example of how you can just drop out of the real world and get onto your yoga mat for an hour. And then it's a new beginning. It can be 10 minutes. It can be 10 breaths. It can be gardening for a little bit. It can be walking. It can be anything that just like slows your mind down and just puts you into a different headspace.
Is there a yoga pose that really helps you or when you are feeling maybe discouraged about something or unsure, and it just helps you regain control?
It depends. I mean, I think sometimes, I think power yoga plays a really important role when you have energy to do it. So there's nothing I love more than just like a 90-minute, let's go, all the sun A's, all the sun B's, multiple bundles after that, like where you're just worked and the body moves in all the different ways that it moves. But that's not always the right answer. If you're kind of going through it, there's a lot of physical and emotional tasks being told on the body where that's just like not something that you should be doing, if I may, tell people how they should live their life. In which case, more restorative opportunities, like again, or just sitting in child pose for 30 minutes or laying on your back with maybe a supported fish pose, just to reground and regain. I think for so many years, my answer was like just beating the living shit out of my yoga mat and hoping everything else would follow suit. And it works a little bit, but it's not necessarily the be all and all solve for everything. Like it doesn't. The more you pound into the body, the more things get stuck. So sometimes it is important to soften and let things just unfold when maybe
Yeah.
you feel like you have all this energy because it really is fight or flight. It's not truly like powerful energy. And I think understanding the difference in your own body is important as you choose what it is to, kind of move through.
Mhm. It's that yin and yang that is
Yeah.
always talked about, and being okay with both. Focusing a little bit on the soft and hard, the dark that you were going through. How were you able to find that yin energy and that yang energy to kind of get you out so that you could write the book, so that you can, move forward in finding the relationships that you wanted and craved the most?
I think for the better part of the journey, it's been very fueled by like the yang power energy. And in some cases that's okay. Like I do believe, I think with all the transitions you go through in life, there is this preparedness factor that's multifaceted. Like we're told to get ready by our mothers, by the Bible, by Abraham Hicks. I mean, it's like you can listen to a lot of different corners of the spiritual world and get the same message. And this one is like a consistent one. And I love it. And I think one of the things that is big for me when I get up and talk to people is this sort of concept of getting ready. And this is where it becomes very personal, person to person. It's not, a one size fits all recipe, but I do think there is a physical conditioning component that goes into all of it. Before going to the book tour, like was I physically ready to do it? Can I travel? Can I like maintain my stamina while going and being in front of people? And sometimes it's an energetic conversation. And sometimes like you literally have to have, the energy tank at full. So for me, I just sort of would always more default to those practices versus the restorative, but it changes time of year. It changes with how much is going on the calendar. I mean, I'm sort of in a power phase right now, which feels really good because I'm coming off of like a year of not having all kinds of like upper cervical issues. And like, I'm sure it's all like kind of stress and grief manifestations in the physical body, of which I'm no stranger to. And I got to be honest, I don't love it. And oftentimes when things sort of like take over, other people don't like it either, but we have to surrender to it. So there was a lot of softness coming forward, a lot of just gentle walks. And that was really the extent of my physical fitness up until lately. And now I've like joined the masses and go to Pilates twice a week. Here we go.
That- That's where I first started in training was Pilates actually. And
Yeah.
it is glorious and it's a great way to complement the yoga practice. So I'm so happy to hear that. It's been
Oh yeah. I'm the basic Pilates girl now. And my 5'10" body on those reformers, I'm like, I feel like I'm going to go flying off because yoga makes you so hypermobile.
yeah.
I can reach it all. It's not that I'm not, and I have muscles somewhere, but like not exactly the wear that you need to like pull that strap in whatever way and then get your leg out of it. I'm like, oh my God, if people think yoga is like Twister, this is like
Yes.
Twister on lay and it's moving, it's tough.
Exactly. It is funny. They are a great balance to one another, but they're so different. And it's so fun to play on those pieces of equipment. And it's also fun as you advance your poses too, you become stronger, similar to yoga. You just become so much stronger and powerful. Now, you mentioned about your book tour, and it takes probably a lot of energy, and you probably dive deep with a lot of the people that come in and hear your story. And what was that experience for you? Meeting people that were potential buyers or were reading your book?
So the book tour back in April, the book was publishing May 21st. So once you kind of set that date, you're like locked in. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, all right, well, the thing's written, it's edited, it's submitted, but now how am I going to sell it? And thankfully, I do have a background in marketing and know a thing or two about just kind of putting things out into the world and hoping people buy them. But I think the biggest kind of aha moment for me was like, I cannot do this alone. And had to be in a place where I was ready to receive help and then also prepared to ask for it. And so that's exactly what I did. I put together this big email that went to like 50 or 60 people, and I kind of retold the story of what I'd gone through. Most of those people on the email list were like in the trenches with me at that time, bringing food, helping me in various ways. I mean, my parents, of course, were on the front lines of that, but friends and just people from all over. And I was very candid about the fact that like during that time, I didn't know how to receive the help and support. It wasn't that I didn't need it because I knew I needed it, but I didn't know what I needed. And it was kind of like, oh my God, nobody gets me. And like that's kind of where some isolation popped up and would just push things away. And I confronted that and said, that was then, but now I'm ready. And here's what you can do for me. And just sort of laid out a plan. You host a party, get a minimum of 20 people together. I don't care if you serve wine or iced tea or a 5-course meal, and I'll show up with books and let's see what happens. And, some usual suspects stepped forward to host, and mind you, I've never been married and I don't have any children. So I'm owed a few showers. And some of these really felt like, the wedding shower of Nadia.
Yeah.
But then other people who were just like, kind of like maybe distant business colleagues or random connections were like, this has moved me. I'm going to host for you. And it just it grew from there, and it grew very organically. I just kind of I followed the interest and the money, if you will, like whoever was stepping up, I'm like, okay, here we go. And then would kind of feel into the next one and take it from there. And it finale'd back in Chicago, which was super special at an event that was hosted by Room and Board. So when it was all said and done, it was a big national brand that got behind the mission and the message. And it was a big room and it was incredible. It was a great experience.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think that writing a book, and especially something so personal, story and being vulnerable, can be very challenging. But I bet it was very rewarding once you saw all those people there and also all the people that opened up their homes to you to host,
Yeah.
talk about your book.
Yeah. There were a few moments that were like the pinch me moments along the way. And it was more so the people I didn't know who had read the book or knew the premise and could relate all too closely. I think I was sharing this morning, a woman was at my event in Northern Michigan and she had lost her husband 2 weeks before. And she was faced with a choice. She could have stayed home and cried in her pillow, or she could step out and take that vulnerability plunge and be open to getting supported by women she didn't even know. And that's exactly what happened. It was such a beautiful moment. But of course, I lead the discussion because I share first, but sometimes the conversation will take off and it's like an anecdote over here and an anecdote over there. And I become more of a facilitator. Not always, but there were a few instances where that happened. Mostly Midwest. The Midwest are like really comfortable sharing. In New York, it was like, I took a pause and someone was like, will you sign my book now? And then we kind of laugh later. It's like, okay, way to bury the feelings. But
Right.
yeah.
Or they, usually, because I have some family on the East Coast, and usually that means, like you said, bury the feelings, but they are feeling it. And they're like, okay, now I have to get out of here and cry and feel my feelings right now outside
Alone.
on the street alone, because it's very difficult. That's something too we can talk about, just mental health, and especially around the subject of caregiving. People are too afraid to show their emotion. Maybe it's different for every person, but they don't want to make their loved one upset. So I've talked to the Kidney Cancer Association. Background, my father had passed away from stage 4 kidney cancer. I got very involved with them, and something was, people were too afraid, whether it was the person that actually was going through kidney cancer or the caregiver, they were too afraid to show the other person emotion because they wanted to stay strong for them, was something that I kept on hearing as a facilitator. But, it's great to actually share the emotions sometimes, because you're showing, well, human connection, but also you're showing that you care and that you love them. So during your experience, I know we kind of talked about it at the beginning, but how are you able to express your feelings? Maybe not always to your loved one that was going through it, your fiance, but to other people? Or were you feeling that you needed to be isolated?
That's a great question. I probably wasn't super transparent with the reality of the feelings, but the one thing, the one things that the feelings do, whether it's in the moment or in hindsight, is relate us. So what I was looking for was apples to apples, somebody who'd been through what I'd been through. So it's like, are you 33? Are you not married yet? I want this whole checklist so that I can then relate to you directly. But what I was missing is that the feelings and the emotions underpin the experiences and thus bring us together in this like connection where we aren't so different. Like the checklist of the thing might be different. No two losses is truly the same, but we've all felt grief and sadness, and just like we felt happiness and joy, it's very similar. So it's a different practice for me now, but also then like I really wasn't looking for pity. And you get a lot of there, little girl types of responses, which literally makes me puke. I can't, with the whole,
Right.
and still like if anything goes wrong, it's like, nope, take it somewhere else. I don't need your pity. Empower me. That's
Yeah.
like what we're looking for, but we don't have the languaging behind like, how do you set me up for success? If you want to support me, but then again, we have to know how to ask for support. We tell people what we need. And so it's just this whole going through it definitely gives you the toolkit, but you don't really have it until you've done it. It's like you're taught in junior high, like, okay, this is how you ask for support when, something's going down. Maybe now, I don't know, but certainly it was not my experience,
No.
6 years ago when I was kind of navigating all of this.
Now, talking about empowerment, when we look at stress, we can either be turned off by it and it can just cause us so much pain, or we could look at it a different way. So I love to end with this question: how has stress saved your life?
Ooh, I'm so not into stress these days. I don't like her. But I think that there are many, many times over the course of our lives where we either choose to get in the pressure cooker or end up there and are like, wait, get me out. And I think a few things can go down in those scenarios. Number one, is it mine? Is like the number one question. And I always ask it if something is feeling stressful or anxiety ridden or difficult in any way, shape, or form, like the number one question is it even mine? And oftentimes it's not. It's somebody else's and you're absorbing it because of like an interpersonal connection or some sort of like sharing physical space or being a child of somebody or whatever it is. But is it mine is number one. And I think once you get clear on whose it is and whether you should even pick it up and put it in your backpack per se, kind of determines the trajectory of how you navigate forward. But it's getting yourself out of the fight or flight that comes after that. You know, if it is yours and you're like, oh shit, I got to get out of here, you know, but it's like, okay, then it's a shift in mindset. And I think that over the course of time, having all of those stressful moments and then finally learning that all it's doing is taking years off of my life, not really doing anything else for me. When you kind of wake up and see how unproductive it is to panic over it all, that, you know, kind of shifts you into the concept of impermanence and that nothing is going to last forever. And they come hand in hand. Like you have to experience something that feels like it's going to be in it forever. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I received like throughout the whole caregiving process was the glimmer of awareness that I wasn't going to be in that space forever. I didn't know how long and I didn't know what it was going to look like. I certainly didn't know quite how hard it was going to be moving forward, but I knew that it wasn't a permanent fixture. Neither is, you know, the good news that comes in your life too. So impermanence is like a super fun practice when things are really shitty. And when things are great, you're like, oh crap, the same rule applies. But yeah, that was kind of a long-winded answer.
Oh, I know a lot of people are going to resonate with that. So thank you. I'm really glad that we were able to have this conversation because caregiving in general, I just think is difficult for people and challenging to talk about, but also you can learn a lot from it and grow. And you don't have to, I love that you don't have to stay stuck in that place forever. Things do get better. There is light. So I'm so appreciative. How can people purchase your book and where can they connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. You can connect with me through my website, soulfulalchemist.com. You can purchase my book through the site or on Amazon. And please sign up for my newsletters. I send out a weekly Into the Deep with Alex. It's a little poetic wisdom drop that hits your inbox. And I think they're fantastic. So hopefully you will too. And you can always find Soul Dive Yoga on Instagram and souldiveyoga.com if you are in Southern California and looking for a yoga studio to practice with.
Alex, I have absolutely loved getting to know you and can't wait to see everything you do in the future. Just really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you again for coming on. I really
Thanks, Sarah.
welcome. Here. Thank you. And everyone, remember, share your takeaways, connect, purchase Soul Dive, and be kind to yourself on this self-love journey. Have a great day. Thanks to Dan Lieber at Beckett Brown Music for the intro and outro music. You can keep in touch with me on Instagram at Sarah Elise Coaching. If you're looking to improve your health and wellness, check out my business, livewellenhanceyou.com. While you're there, join the Live Well Enhance You email list and receive exclusive offers for our wellness programs and events. Until next time, take care.